Welcome to my research prospectus. This is a presentation on exploring motivations and barriers to adoption of best management practices in the Flint River Basin. An overview of what this study is, we'll start out by talking about the primary focus of the study, which is to obtain a better understanding of the decision-making process of producers when they are considering implementing best management practices. Best management practices, also called BMPs or conservation practices, are methods to try to decrease or prevent non-point source pollution and obtain water quality goals by implementing certain practices such as cover cropping, reduced tillage, or nutrient management. A question that I'd like to find the answer to throughout the study is, are current best management practice communication efforts from extension effective for increasing adoption rates? Currently, adoption rates are very low in general across the U.S., across all commodities. So I would like to see if better communication or tailored communication can help that, or if there's other factors at play there. This study is going to focus on cotton and peanut producers in the Flint River Basin of Southwest Georgia. The reason that I chose this group is because Georgia is one of the top cotton and peanut producers in the country. And also I have not found any literature that looks into perceptions on best management practices specific to cotton and peanut farmers. The centrality of this study, we'll just go ahead and talk about my role as an agricultural communicator, is to share ideas and information about agriculture. That can be to an array of audiences, not just those outside of agriculture, but also to those inside of agriculture about topics pertinent to us. I have an interest in working with extension and producers to solve agricultural problems, and I feel that this study will help me to do that. And I want to see if producers are aware of certain programs and practices, or if they have other reasons for choosing not to adopt these certain practices. To give a preview of the existing literature that's out there, American farmers tend to consider themselves to be good stewards of the land. However, this is in contrast to how many, or really most of Americans view farmers. Literature concedes that the availability of technology and knowledge on how to control non-point source pollution is available to producers, but unless voluntary adoption of best management practices drastically increases, non-point source pollution will persist because current adoption rates are just too low. One thing that the literature has found is that conservation adoption behaviors need to be better understood before future approaches are implemented. The empirical research on this topic has not been able to give any consistent predictors of conservation practice adoption. And so researchers must incorporate new approaches, such as the approach that I'm proposing in this study of using Q methodology to make progress in this area of scholarship. The significance of the study, there's an urgent need for higher adoption rates of conservation practices for environmental degradation to decrease related to agriculture. Scholars have called for research into best management practice communication from extension, a critical gap in the literature. I haven't seen anything looking into communication efforts from extension on this topic, and I feel that this could fill that void. And a stronger understanding of producer motivations will give insights into how producers prioritize management decisions. So this wouldn't be beneficial only to me, but this could also be very beneficial to extension and those other entities who are helping create these best management practices to communicate to producers. An introduction of the study, we can just give a brief history on best management practices. Concerns about the impacts from agricultural runoff on water quality can date back all the way to the 1930s and the Dust Bowl era. This era, which was very really a travesty, was related to poor agricultural practices and drought that were combined, and then intense wind erosion happened, and so that really showed people how important it is to take care of the soil and then also preserve the natural watershed functions. The U.S. government created the Clean Water Act in 1972, and this act gave states the responsibility to manage agricultural non-point source pollution, and also gave the USDA orders to give producers technical assistance and financial incentives for reducing non-point source pollution through adopting best management practices or conservation practices. But because adoption rates are so low, we can see that people aren't really buying into these financial incentives. So we aren't exactly sure, what the reasons are for this, but that's what I would like to find out or to give a better look into for this study. Some literature has said that this is as simple as different motivations and attitudes of the specific farmers. They've broken it down into a stewardship mindset versus a profit-driven mindset. So I guess economics versus stewardship. And I don't know if it's that simple. Maybe it is, but that's something that I'd like to find out throughout the study, or see if there's other factors at play. To go into the literature, studies that have attempted to identify determinants of conservation practice adoption can be placed into one of three categories: agent-based models, applied economic studies, and lit reviews. Agent-based models, kind of what I'm wanting to do for this study, and focusing on a specific area or commodity and looking into how they are, perceive best management practices. Applied economic studies look at things from more of a microeconomic standpoint, and then lit reviews are synthesis studies on this topic. The most applicable predictors of conservation practice adoption for the purposes of this study and really in general are farmer attitudes, awareness of environmental issues and conservation programs, as well as the characteristics of each of the specific farms. Recommendations for future best management practice adoption research have called for studies that focus on specific geographic locations, commodities, or practice types to better explain conservation actions and to understand the nuanced behavior of farmers. And the methodology that I'm proposing for this study is Q methodology, but also a qualitative approach. So this study will consist of two articles that will both be framed by the theory of planned behavior. Article 1 will include a mixed methods approach that uses Q methodology, and then Article 2 will be a qualitative analysis. Both of these studies will use the same group of participants, and the interviews will occur during the same meeting. Q methodology was chosen for this study to answer demand for the literature for ag communications research to incorporate methods that focus on measuring subjectivity without sacrificing statistical analysis. So that's where Q method fits in this niche area perfectly. This study will be conducted in the early spring of 2022 and will consist of interviews with cotton and peanut producers in roughly 10 to 15 counties in Southwest Georgia that will be within that Flint River Basin. And then for the data analysis and interpretation part of this study, I'm planning on using a PQ method software. I'm planning on working with Dr. Brandy Walker for this data analysis part so that I can use her expertise to get the proper output and data analysis from this study. And here are my citations, and that's it.